Morning, morning. My camera's in a different place, so I might look down for the first few bits. All right, let's get all this sorted. All looking good. Welcome back. Can't believe it's Monday again. 10 o'clock. This last week has gone crazy quick. I'm gonna do a bit of a recap today of the nerves. I think it's always good to do that. And yeah, had a really good teaching session yesterday with a couple of our regular viewers. We had a whole day doing neurological testing and learning about the nervous system, and yeah, so I've just been nerves all weekend, and then again today. So yeah, welcome back. If you've not seen this before, then do a weekly anatomy session where start off with the different regions of the body, and we'll start off with the bones and the joints, how they join together, then the connective tissue, so the kind of passive structures like capsules and ligaments, and then depending on the region, obviously like in the knee you'll have things like the meniscus and the ACL, PCL and all that kind of stuff, whereas the ankle and the foot is mainly the ligaments and the retinacular, so it's obviously different for each area. And then we go on to the muscles and the tendons, and then and again, depending on the region, depends on how many muscles and tendons there are. So in the foot and ankle, we've had quite a few, so that's why foot and ankle tends to take a little bit longer. And then as we get up into the knee, there are fewer muscles and tendons around that area, but obviously links into the ankle and the foot that we've already covered. So we'll then start to extend some of those structures up into the knee. So yeah, it's then we'll go hip, and then we'll go lower back, and we'll work our way all around the body. And if you have been watching for a while, we've been doing this for I've been doing this for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and pretty much every week, apart from the odd break and bank holidays and stuff. So yeah, there's I think what we're on now, episode 221. So there's pretty much, well, over 100 hours, because every episode's over half an hour. It's about 40 minutes. And this is our 4th time around the body, and it is our last time. So because after this I'm going to change the structure of the live sessions a little bit to talk a bit more about clinical issues and pathology, and we'll do a similar kind of format where we work through the regions, but ideally we want to use case studies and things like that, so we can have a bit of a discussion about the anatomical things that you may consider when a patient's coming in with a problem. So so that's what's going to happen after the anatomy side is finished. So it's kind of like a the anatomy's done. We've done that. Been around 4 times, so that, you know, we've got loads and loads of content there. So we're going to start to make that a little bit more clinically relevant after this particular session. So that's the plan. Yeah. Yeah. So, but my eyesight's going to have to make that bigger. Hope you all had a great. I did. Thank you. Thank you. Legend Tris. Yes. Give us update on the nerve testing. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I'm glad you found it useful, Tris. It was a good day yesterday. Good day. Right, let's get you going. Enough of me blabbing. So, got a quick recap of what we covered last time. Just go through the slides because all the videos were there last week. What there is a very close correlation with the nerves, and is to do with the compartments. So when we looked at the compartments, the nerves supply a compartment, and again, if you've not seen that, have a look back at the videos where we looked at the connective tissue and all the different compartments in the leg. And then following those nerves, we have the blood supply, and they're very closely linked. They follow a very similar pathway. They have very similar names quite often. So again, once you get to know the regions, you get to know the sections, then everything starts to make sense, I think. And I learned something today as well. On the way here, I had to get a cab this morning to where I am, and I was just looking up something because I was like, oh, I wonder what the derivative of that word is, and it was the saphenous region of the body, and I found out it's from Arabic. So we'll have a look at what that means as well, and it makes sense when you look at the anatomy. It makes sense. That's why they called it that particular word. So yeah, we'll do that as well, just because that's interesting to me. So I'll share it. Right then. So yeah, last time we looked at. Let's get my arrow. We looked at the sciatic nerve and the fact that it's two nerves that splits. And in your textbooks, it says it splits around the knee or just above the knee, but it can split as high up as the sciatic notch, which is an area in the pelvis. So again, if you're learning anatomy for the first time and you've learnt this kind of year one, and it's like that's where the sciatic nerve is and that's where it splits, and there's a lot of anomalies within the body, and it stems from embryology. Again, if you've heard this before from me, then apologies, but I think it's useful to know, and it explains a lot about why we have these differences. It's when you're developing as an embryo, you're basically 3 layers of tissue, and it's like a well, we looked at an embryo the other day. Kind of looks like a prawn. And and from that kind of prawn-shaped structure comes your limbs, so that your arms start as kind of stumps, and then they grow out, and then obviously they twist and hang naturally. Same with the legs, so they kind of come out and then they twist and come down. And it's from that area, as they grow outwards, the nerves that are on the central part of the tissue, so the neural tube in the middle, they get pulled and stretched apart, and that's why the nerves then obviously go to your fingertips or your toes, whatever part of the body it is. But when you're developing, you have several nerves that will be going along that same pathway, and then as you develop, the nerve impulses will choose their preferred route, and the other the nerves that were there will die away because they're not being used. So that's why we've got some anomalies with during embryology, with something like Poland syndrome, which is where the chest wall doesn't form. Yeah, so there'll be certain bits that are skipped or missed, different pathways of things, slightly different position of things, and that's why we have it, is because of the way we develop. So some people's sciatic nerve will split really high, and it will go to, you may have heard this, muscle piriformis. Some of it will go, go over and under the piriformis. Sometimes it will go through as one. Sometimes it will go over as one, under as one. Sometimes it will split. The top one will go through, the bottom one will go under. So there's lots of different variations, and when we get to that region, I'll show you some of those. It's the same for the median nerve as well in the wrist. We talked about that when we did the wrist and the hand. The median nerve is supposed to go underneath the carpal tunnel, but sometimes it goes over, sometimes it's under, sometimes it splits into 2, sometimes it splits into 3. Yeah, so there's lots of different. Oh, sorry about that. My webcam's just gone. There's lots of different different ways that it works. Okay, so yeah, that's why we've got all these different anomalies. But at the end, it's usually this way. So even if it splits a bit higher, this is where it usually tracks down when it gets to the leg. So we've got the what used to be called the peroneal nerve. We looked at that, and it's the fibular nerve. I'll just get rid of that so you can see the whole thing. So we've got the fibular nerve now down the outside where the fibula is, so that laterally, and there are two little branches of that as well. So as it comes down past the knee, around the fibular head, it then splits into the deep and superficial, and then you've got two different origins within that nerve as well. So some of the nerve fibers will come from, or go to, sorry, the sensory part of the nerve root. Some of them will come from the motor part. So we've got some that control the muscles, and then some that receive information from the skin and the joints and the bones and all that. So and the ones from the skin are the cutaneous nerves. So and they if there's a problem with those, then you will have altered sensation within the regions that they cover. So this area here, this is all your cutaneous distribution for the superficial part of the nerve, and then you'll see there's a little gap just here. So the web space in between your big toe and your second toe, that little gap there, that bit is supplied by the deep peroneal or fibular nerve. It's so hard for me to get out of saying peroneal. Deep fibular nerve, which goes through the anterior compartment. So and then that then makes up the sensation for the dorsum of the foot, so the top of the foot. And then the other part of it, yes, will come down the so you got outside, superficial, and then deep, and then you've also got, just move this out of the way. Yeah, so that's your cutaneous distribution there. So you've got the before they split into deep and superficial, we've got this common fibular area here where you'll get a supply around the outside of the knee, that kind of area there, and then this superficial distribution, and then that deep one just there. Okay, so that's the whole picture. And then the rest of the leg, so the sensation for the leg, is supplied by a couple of other nerves. So the tibial nerve, which is part of the sciatic, and again, this is the split, which is really common, so just above the knee. It's split into the common peroneal or the common fibula, and then the tibial nerve will come down the back here, yeah, and then that will go medially, so towards your inside of your ankle, and then it will split again and go underneath the foot. And this is what we were looking at last week. And then you've got your plantar nerves. So the plantar aspect of the foot is the bottom of the foot, and you'll have that tibial, there'll be a branch off of the tibial nerve which will come down the inside of your ankle and then split and then go and supply your feet, okay, the undersurface of your feet. So if we have a look at that, this is one of the areas where it splits, and we've got this nerve which we call the Baxter's nerve, and that can cause loss of sensation around, or irritation as well. So it might be like pins and needly type feeling, that kind, you know, when you're kind of laying on your arm funny and you get that strange sensation. That can mimic plantar fasciitis. So we talked about that. So there's lots of other structures that are around that medial heel. So it might not be plantar fascia, but it's very common for it to be misdiagnosed as a plantar fasciopathy. So but if it's not getting any better with the usual kind of fascial plantar fascia treatment, then maybe we need to look at something else. Okay, and one of the things may be the Baxter's nerve. So it's the first branch of the lateral plantar nerve, which is that FBLPN. Okay, lovely way of remembering it. It's a lot easier to say Baxter's nerve, although we are moving away from nerves and areas of the body that are named after people. Yeah, so that's a shift that is happening now. There's lots of things like for example, the fallopian tubes. are no longer being called the fallopian tubes. They're being called the uterine tubes. So not uterine tube. I can't remember what they're called, but they're not being called the fallopian tubes anymore. Yeah, anything that's named after someone that's discovered it, that's starting to not be used and replaced with more anatomical names now, or positional names. So it's all changed. Even just changing from peroneal to fibular is hard enough, let alone anything else. So this is the distribution of the plantar nerve then, so this is a branch from your tibial going down the back of the leg, coming over that inside of the ankle, and then it splits around by the malleoli, and then this is where it goes off to. So we've got out towards the outside, so the lateral plantar nerve, and then the medial. And it's very similar, as I was saying last week, to the median and ulnar nerve, although they're two separate nerves. This one comes off the same, but where you've got a supply of your first three fingers and then the last two with the median and ulnar. With this one, it's lateral and medial plantar. It's mad how it's very, very similar. So it's slightly different in the origin, but very similar in the distribution. And so this is, if your foot goes numb around this area here, then it can be your medial plantar nerve. If it's around this area here, then it could be the lateral. And I think I mentioned before, I had a cyclist who had what he called numb foot, and it kind of went hot. Had loads of tests done, and nothing came back. And we just basically looked at the compression of his cycling shoes, and when he changed the brand of shoes, and when in fact he had one of those dial shoes, and when he turned the dial up, it was only after a little while when he'd been cycling, his foot was getting hot, swelling a little bit, and then it was compressing the nerve, and it was making the inside here of his foot go numb. So he actually changed to old-fashioned kind of lace-up style shoes, and then didn't get the compression anymore, and his foot was fine. So sometimes it's as simple as that. There may not be any nerve root issue. It could just be something more localized. And then you'll see here we've got a couple of other nerves that fill in the gaps. So the tibial nerve, which we've seen already. So that's the main branch of it before it splits into the plantar nerves. So the tibial nerve itself has got a offshoot that supplies the heel, and then this area here, this is the saphenous. Okay, so that's the one that I was just doing a bit of research on, and then the sural nerve on the outside of the foot, and then that completes the sensation of the skin for that whole region. So all of those cutaneous fields. So let's have a look at your sural and saphenous. So your saphenous comes from way up here, which is from the femoral nerve. Again, we'll talk about that when we get to the hip as we move up. So this is the saphenous here, and it's when we look at the blood supply in a second, you'll see that there's a saphenous vein and a saphenous, a greater saphenous vein and a I think it's called lesser. I think it's the lesser one, lesser or lower. And so you've got different blood supply and nerves, so different structures, but called the same name. So this is what I'm saying. Once you know one and you know the region, then you can often guess what the name of the others are. And the saphenous comes down and supplies the inside of the foot, inside of the ankle. And this is a cutaneous branch coming off of the femoral. Okay, so from up high, your femoral comes from initially L2, L4, and goes over the front of your thigh. Okay? Yeah, like I said, we'll cover that when we get up to there. And then we've got the sural branch. So we've got lateral sural cutaneous and medial sural cutaneous coming off of the original peroneal and tibial nerves, and these are purely sensory. Okay, so the lateral sural is the skin over the lateral aspect of the foot and the lateral aspect of the calf, and then the back of the calf is your medial sural. Okay, so yeah, so that it just bit of a quick recap of all the nerves, lower limb. All of the videos were last time, so you can have a look at those. And now we will finish off the foot by having a look at the arteries. Now, clinically, the arteries are useful to obviously determine whether the blood supply to the foot, because we were saying last week about why your foot goes numb. It could be because of the nerve supply is impeded in some way, so there's some kind of block, some kind of compression of that nerve, or injury to the nerve, maybe an inflammatory issue around it compressing it, or to the nerve itself. Or it could be the blood supply is interrupted to the foot, and that will give you pins and needles, tingling, numbness as well. So we need to think about how we can differentiate between those two. So if you know where the palpable arteries are, you can feel for the pulse and see whether the pulse diminishes in certain positions, or whatever kind of symptoms the patient comes in with. So that's what we'll have a look at now. And they stem from, again, we'll go higher when we cover the knee and into the hip, but they stem from this artery called the popliteal artery. The popliteal artery is behind the knee. It is a continuation of another artery, which we'll look at when we get up into the hip. It's exactly the same artery, it's just given a different name as it travels through the different sections of the body. Okay, so when it's by the knee, it's popliteal. As it travels through this area and where it splits, it's given different names. So if we have a look here, there's the popliteal, and then we've got a branch coming off of that, which is the anterior tibial. So you can guess where that's going to go. And then we've got another branch coming off, which I assume has been renamed the fibular artery, the peroneal artery just there. And then we've also got the posterior tibial artery just here. Okay, so it's all coming off of that popliteal, and but then we've got little branches coming off and supplying other different bits as well. So anterior tibial artery, if we have a look at that one, let's just go to that sec. Okay, so this is the anterior. So you saw it came off of the popliteal at the back. Here we go. So I'm just going to pause that there. So there's your popliteal artery just there. Okay, that's the popliteus muscle. That's a muscle at the back of the knee. And again, when we look at the knee and the muscles, we'll look at that. Then you've got your fibula just here. Okay, so we're going to have a look at so this is on the back of the leg, where the popliteal artery is, on the literally in the crease of your knee. Okay, so that's that area just there. Let's have a look at the pathway of this one. So there it is there, and then can you see that branch coming off there? That's popping through and going through to the front of the leg. So in between your fibula and your tibia. There we go. So there's fibularis longus, peroneus longus. There's a little gap here, and we talked about that before. Just remember the nerve will split and come through there as well. So with it will come the artery too, and this is going into the anterior compartment of the leg. Yeah, so that front bit of the shin. So there's your tibialis anterior, and it's running all the way here, so anterior to interosseous membrane. So where your fibula and your tibia are, there's a connective tissue in between the two, and that connective tissue divides the different compartments. Okay, so you've got your anterior compartment and the deep posterior compartment. And this artery will run on the front, so the anterior part of that membrane, as it's going down the front of your leg. All right, so it's still quite deep, because there's muscles on top of it as you look at a leg from the front. But yeah, it's going in front of that interosseous membrane on its way down. So if we have a look at its pathway, so yeah, it supplies blood mainly to the anterior compartment, which kind of makes sense because of where it is. This is the retinacular of the foot, which we were looking at quite a few weeks ago now. And then what we have, now this is quite an important artery in the foot. It's very superficial. It's kind of the end of the line of the arterial supply. So this is a really good point to check for blood supply, because if there's a pulse here, that means that the tubes all the way back to the popliteal and all the way back to the iliac arteries, they've got to be in good order, because if the dorsalis pedis artery is getting a pulse, is getting a blood supply, then everything else must do as well. There can't be any blockages on the way. But if the dorsalis pedis, you're not feeling a pulse, and the foot is cold and it's tingly and going a bit blue, then there's got to be a blockage somewhere in the pipe. Yeah. So and then you go back to the popliteal, and you go, is it coming from there? So can you feel the pulse in the popliteal? And if you can there, but you can't in dorsalis pedis, then there may be something blocking in between those two parts. So it's like a garden hose with a kink in. Yeah. So you're trying to find out, right, okay, my hose isn't working, so where's the blockage? But if you've got water coming out of another part, then it must be between where the water's coming out and where it's not, so that you can investigate that. Obviously, we can't investigate that any further, but they need to be sent for investigations. So this dorsalis pedis is really superficial. It comes off the anterior tibial artery of the foot. So here we go. So there it is there, anterior tibial artery. All of the muscles and tendons that we were looking at before. Extensor hallucis longus tendon just there. So there's the blood vessel coming through. So it's deep around the front of the ankle, but then as it gets closer to the top of the foot, there it is there. Okay, so there's your dorsalis pedis. And what this will do is, as it's travelling along, so that this is near your first and second toe, and like I say, it's quite an easy one to palpate. You can because it's so superficial. So you can usually palpate it with your hands, or you can use a device called a Doppler, where it will turn a pulse into an auditory sound, so you can hear the pulse. Okay, see, and it's quite often checked if you go to a podiatrist. It's another one that's checked as well if you've broken your ankle, especially if you've had a fractured dislocation, because the blood supply can get trapped between the bones, or it may be torn. So they'll check the dorsalis pedis pulse to make sure that you've still got a blood supply to your foot. All right, so that's something that they may check if you do trauma first aid for like football or rugby, something like that. So that's a important one to know. So there it is there, and see it traveling through here. Yeah, and you got artery going to your toes, but there is a blood supply. Yeah, there we go. So it dives through towards the plantar aspect of the foot. So that you've got the dorsalis pedis coming along the top, and then in between the toes, it will dive down to get to the bottom of the foot and link up with another artery, which we'll have a look at in a sec. Okay. We will. Okay, so here's the other arteries that we need to have a look at. This one is also palpable. And it's behind the medial malleolus, so your inside ankle bone. You can feel the pulse here quite easily. So that again, this is another one that you can check for the blood supply of the foot to see if the blood supply is good. So dorsalis pedis and posterior tibial. This one's quite easy to palpate as well. You find that malleolus and then you just literally just put your fingers behind, and it's usually quite a strong pulse. This is quite a big artery compared to the dorsalis pedis. It's quite small. Yeah, you can usually feel this one easier than the other one. Right. Yeah, here we go. So you got anterior tibial artery, which is what we've just seen on the last video, splits into the dorsalis pedis and then your tarsal artery, so that's going towards the tarsal bones, and then the dorsalis pedis will dive down in between your toes. Here we go. So this is the link up. So the faded artery here, so there's your anterior tibial, there it is coming along there. There it goes into the tarsals, which we've just seen on the top, and then here it's the dorsalis pedis, and then it goes down, dives down, and then links up with this deep plantar artery, which is coming from your posterior tibial. It's very similar to the hand, yeah. The hand has got a very similar makeup where the ulnar and the radial arteries will link up with each other, and they'll pass through from anterior to posterior and form a loop, yeah, which is really useful because if you have a problem with one side, then we've got another side that can take over the blood supply. Okay, so we've got arteries on the dorsum and the plantar meet up. So we've got the dorsalis pedis and the lateral plantar, and they'll meet up. Well, they're originally from the posterior tibial, but these will meet up to form a loop. Okay, all around there. Cool, and we'll go over that one in a sec. Let me just show you these. So this is posterior tibial artery, hopefully. Okay, so this is probably a better picture actually. There's the popliteal artery there. This is a big artery. The popliteal one is pretty chunky. These are your hamstring muscles. These are your gastroc muscles, gastrocnemius, so your calf muscle. And we've got two heads to the gastrocnemius, and they split and come up and attach onto the femur. So the blood supply will go deep to the gastrocnemius. Yeah, so it's underneath gastrocnemius. So I've lots of sciatic questions as I work in chiropractic in the soft ends. We work up the body. This become clear. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll probably do a couple of sessions on the just around the knee and the hip for the sciatic nerve, and then especially from the lumbar spine. Yeah. So what will happen is you can take the foot nerve videos, the knee nerve videos, and the hip nerve videos, and then the lumbosacral plexus, and then you can join everything all together. So you've got the ends of the nerves and the blood supply, and then you've got all the bits in between and where it all passes through. Yeah. So yeah, that'll definitely be covered. Yeah, that's a biggie, that one. Okay, so yeah, popliteal artery. These are your gastrocs. So gastrocnemius, where they split. There they have gone. Okay, so now that those have gone, so you can see how deep this artery is. So it's underneath your gastrocnemius, and then also you might recognise these muscles. That's your soleus. There's your popliteus. So you can see it's deep to your soleus as well. Yeah, so you've got gastrocnemius and soleus, and then there's the nerve. There's the artery. Yeah, so that popliteal artery is quite exposed behind the back of the knee, but then as soon as it passes past the knee, it then dives deep behind gastrocnemius and soleus. Yeah. So yeah, there's your popliteal artery. There's your anterior tibial, and then there's your branch for your peroneal. So going down the peroneal side, we'll have a look. Yeah, we've got a specific video for that one as well. And then we're going to follow this one down. This is your posterior tibial. So this one is going down towards the inside of your ankle, and that's where you'll be able to feel the pulse. Okay. Here we go. So there it is there. Yeah. So anterior tibial, peroneal, fibularis. And then there it is coming down there. So this is the one we're interested in at the moment. So this is really, really deep. Yeah, it supplies deep and superficial posterior compartments, which we looked at before. There's your transverse septum. And then here we are getting towards the ankle. There's the medial malleolus. This is the retinacular. And if you remember from a little while ago, we had a little saying to remember the structures that were behind the medial malleolus. So it's a Tom, Dick, and a very naughty Harry. Yeah, the A very is the artery and vein. Yeah, so we've got posterior tibial artery, posterior tibial vein, and the naughty is the nerve. Okay, so that's the order, usual order in which they align as well. Okay, and they're all kept in place by this retinacula that is on the back of the ankle to help guide, and there's tunnels within this retinacula. There's your heel, and then there it is coming through there. Okay, so it's around that area there where it's palpable. I'll just pause that there. So around this area here, there's the malleoli, and then there's the artery behind. So if you feel for the malleoli, feel behind it, you can usually get the pulse directly behind it. If you go a bit too low, there's quite a lot of dense tissue there, and it's a little bit harder to palpate. But higher up, there's not as much covering. And then that's where it's splitting into the medial and lateral plantar arteries, and then these supply the bottom of the foot with blood. Okay, so here we go. So there's your posterior tibial artery. Here's the split. So we've got lateral medial, so that if you correlate that with the picture down here, and then there we can see the medial side. Okay, and then so that's obviously going underneath the surface of the foot. And then we've got the lateral one. So again, remember where those medial and lateral plantar nerves split. The blood supply is doing the same. So it's splitting in exactly the same kind of fashion. You've got a calcaneus branch going towards the heel. And then this lateral plantar artery will come obviously laterally towards the little toe. There's the base of the fifth metatarsal under there. And then it will link up with the dorsalis pedis. Yeah, so that's the one from the top. Just playing that again. So yeah, calcaneal branch, then the lateral plantar artery outside of the foot, so little toe side, all the way down, and then as it kind of sweeps across near where the metatarsal phalangeal joints are, it will then link up with the dorsalis pedis around there. Cool. And then the last bit of all of those is this one. So this is the peroneal artery or fibularis artery. So here we go. So there's your popliteal again. There's the posterior tibial, which we just had a look at. There was the anterior tibial just above it, going off towards the front. And then if we have a look at where the peroneal artery goes, so it's this little offshoot here we're looking at now, and there it is there. Okay, so that there. See how it kind of, all of the blood supply kind of wraps around the fibula? Like that. So this is going to be supplying the lateral compartment. There it is all there. Ends just, just by the lateral malleolus. So it doesn't go down into the foot, it's just that bone. Okay, and then that completes all of the blood supply, arterial blood supply, all around the leg. And then the very last bit, just to finish off, are the veins. And what I was reading about was, so the main one is saphenous vein. and the you've got a greater and short. Sorry, I said lesser. Yeah, it's the short saphenous vein, and yeah, so the greater one is quite deep, and the short one was one where it was easily found. So it was used in phlebotomy in years gone by, and the greater is quite deep, which means, and that's why they called it saphenous, because it means hidden. There you go. So the yeah, top part is quite deep, or the greater is quite deep, and then the short is fairly superficial, especially around the foot. Ooh. So yeah, you can find that one quite easily, and then that is your deoxygenated blood going back up to the heart. Okay, so there you go. Oh, hello. What's happened there? Oh, the webcam's gone again. Bear with me a sec. There we go. Back. Oh. So next week, I will have my new office sorted. They're just doing the Wi-Fi today, so I'm on a temporary one today, and then everything will be set up. Oh, it's going to be bliss. So yeah, I'll be back next week, 10 o'clock Monday with GMT. With the knee. So we're going to start looking at the knee. So we'll have a look at the bones and the joints of the knee. Then we'll add on the connective tissue, then the muscles, and then the nerve and blood supply, which will then link up with what we've done today, so that we'll get in this flow through the body, and you can see how everything all connects together. Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining me this morning. I will see you next week. Take care.